an American fugitive who faked his own death can be extradited from Scotland to his homeland, a sheriff has ruled. Nicholas Rossi, who claims to be Arthur Knight and a victim of mistaken identity, is wanted in Utah to face rape charges. Sheriff Norman McFadyen said Rossi was as dishonest and deceitful as he is evasive and manipulative. The final decision on his extradition now rests with Scottish ministers. Rossi, 35, was being treated for COVID-19 when he was arrested at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow on the 13th of December 2021. BBC Scotland later established he was a registered sex offender in the US and spoke to his ex-wife, Kathryn Heckendorn, who said she was physically and psychologically abused during their 7-month marriage. On Wednesday he appeared before Edinburgh Sheriff Court via videolink to learn the outcome of the extradition case. Earlier in the morning the fugitive sat slumped in his wheelchair before the camera in Edinburgh's Sawton prison with his face hidden. But as Mungo Bovey KC was asking for his client to be excused, Rossi raised his head and shouted at the sheriff, calling him a disgrace to justice. At that point the clerk cut the video connection. When the court reconvened, Sheriff McFadyen said Rossi's character had undoubtedly complicated and extended what is ultimately a straightforward case. He also highlighted unreliable testimony from the fugitive, ranging from the length of time he had been in a wheelchair to his claim that he couldn't lift his hands above his head. The sheriff concluded that there was no legal barrier to extradition. He added, "It follows that I must send the case of the requested person Nicholas Rossi to the Scottish ministers for their decision whether he is to be extradited." Last November Sheriff McFadyen ruled that he was Nicholas Rossi and not Arthur Knight, as he had repeatedly claimed, with the bizarre story making headlines on both sides of the Atlantic. Authorities in the US have said Rossi was known by several aliases, including Nicholas McFadyen. He was involved in local politics in the state of Rhode Island and was a critic of the state's child welfare system. In December 2019 he told media in his home state that he had late-stage non-Hodgkin lymphoma and had weeks to live. Several news outlets in Rhode Island reported that he had died in February 2020. A memorial posted online described him as a warrior that fought on the front lines for 2 decades for children's rights and said his ashes had been scattered at sea. But less than 2 years later Rossi, who was the subject of an Interpol wanted notice, turned up on a hospital ward in Glasgow during the pandemic. In March last year, as he awaited his extradition hearing, the fugitive was interviewed by BBC Scotland reporter Stephen Gordon in Glasgow.